Okay, so I'm gonna try to make this video as short as I possibly can. It's just one thought that I wanted to broach with this video. Um, I was watching some videos on YouTube. I don't know, just going over different videos and just watching what I feel like watching right now. And I come across a Lord Jamar interview. For anybody that doesn't know who Lord Jamar is, he's a 80s rapper, I believe 90s rapper as well, and for an old rap group. And then he became an actor, and now he has a podcast. And they were talking about the dominance of the black athlete, and he brought up, the interviewer brought up Jimmy the Greek, and he was talking about how Jimmy the Greek was fired for his comments about the black athlete. And I thought it was a pretty interesting video. And then they started diving deeper into it, and the interviewer came out and he mentioned that Jimmy the Greek also said that I'm paraphrasing here, this is not the actual quote, but he said, if we allow if we allow these black players to become coaches, there will be nothing left for the white man in sports. And when he said that, I started thinking about this whole Mark Jackson situation that happened a few years ago before Steve Kerr became the coach of the Warriors. And I've always wondered, like, what the hell was cause for his termination? I mean, this dude, he did probably the best job anybody has possibly done since Don Nelson was there, and he beat the Dallas Mavericks, being the number 8 seed. That was probably the most refined and artistic style of coaching that I've seen. I mean, this dude improved this team every year. He brought Steph and Clay and Draymond along, and also Harrison Barnes. And the foundation in which Golden State was built on, where they won their titles, was established by him. So I thought it was only fitting that he would be the one to reap the rewards for this team. But it didn't work out that way. He was fired, and they brought in Steve Kerr. And then Steve Kerr was looked at as the coaching genius, because where Mark never got a chance to get them, Steve Kerr got them. And I believe that year that they fired Mark Jackson, Steve Kerr got them to the NBA Finals, and they beat Cleveland. And in my opinion, was a surprising defeat. But it couldn't have been too surprised, because they did beat the Spurs in the playoffs as well. So they were a pretty good team. But the reason why it brought up Mark Jackson is because I honestly believe that if Mark Jackson would have completed the process, and I'm not, fuck that Sixers tagline shit. Like, I'm talking about what Mark Jackson did in Golden State was the real process. He didn't use tanking as a way to improve the team. He used great coaching, teaching, and developing as what the Sixers is missing right now. And I thought that it was a breath of fresh air, man, that a guy, who nobody talked about. Nobody talked about this guy. As far as, we talk about Greg Popovich, shit. We're talking about Brad Stevens now. You talk about Steve Kerr. Even Dwayne Casey, Dwayne Casey don't get as much recognition for the job that he does. He got the Detroit Pistons, to the playoffs. And yeah, I get it. They made the playoffs last year, but this team this year looks so depleted. That team just looked like a run-of-the-mill, middle of the pack, or like a late lottery pick team, type team. Like, I don't know, man. I just don't think that these coaches get as much recognition as they should. And so when I was thinking about Mark Jackson, I thought that it was some inside upper management coup to get rid of him, to bring in somebody of the right pigmentation, because if Mark Jackson would have succeeded, and the only way he could have succeeded is if he won the NBA Finals as a head coach. If Mark Jackson would have succeeded, this might open the floodgates to something more. And I don't really like bringing up racial issues, man, because I think they're pointless. I mean, the world we pretty much live in is already set in stone, and there's really not too much we can do unless we blow the whole shit up. But I mean, this is just an example of, I don't know. I had dreams of being a screenwriter when I was a little kid, and I've worked my entire life to get to that goal. And then when I started learning, because I was a naive kid, and once I started learning how the world really works and the price for what the price that I would have to pay to get what I wanted, I mean, I just wasn't willing to do it. And right now, I'm just not motivated to do really anything of significance with my life. And I'm totally content with that. And that's sad because, I mean, Mark Jackson is just an example of why hard work doesn't pay off. You work your whole life to get to a certain point, and most of the time it gets snatched away from you before you're able to even benefit from what you worked for. Like, a lot of people work their entire lives to get to a certain space of comfortability in their life, and they die before they're able to even benefit from it. And all that work that they spent their entire life working towards is just gone, and somebody else gets to benefit from it. You know, and it's sad. I mean, it really is. And I don't know, I'm just gonna watch this like a 2-minute video of Charles Barkley talking about Mark Jackson, and you know, I'm just gonna let it play and possibly give my thoughts here and there.
You know, you had mentioned this last night too, Charles. You know, and we had, even while Golden State was still playing, when he was saying, "Hey, I'm coaching for my life here," and that kind of thing.
I have no idea why he was coaching for his life. You know, they made the playoffs one time in 17 years before he got there, and he got them to the playoffs back-to-back years. They were not the team that was going to beat the Clippers. The Clippers had a better team, and they were Mounters Bogut.
Now, real quick, I have heard Steve Kerr bring up Mark Jackson, and yeah, I believe I heard him say that he accredited a lot of Golden State's success to Mark Jackson. But really, Mark Jackson should have been the one that should have taken a majority of the credit. I mean, this dude should be there right now. I'm not saying the course that Golden State took to get where they are today is the same route they would have taken, you know, had Mark stayed on. But this team was a year away from winning. A year away from winning. You know, it's kind of like TQ Barber, who played, 14, 15 years in the NFL. Was one of the best running backs during his time, and, you know, just never really could get his team a title. He played in the Super Bowl in 2000 against the Ravens and got completely smacked. And then the one time he would have had his best chance to win a title, he retired before he even got a chance to play that year. He retired after the 2007 season, 2006 season, and the New York Jets went on. I mean, God damn it! I'm sorry. The New York Giants went on to beat the New England Patriots the very next year, and he missed out on his chance at a Super Bowl championship. He could have had what Jerome Bettis had in Pittsburgh when Jerome Bettis finally won a title his last year playing. And, you know, again, I don't know, man. It's something to think about.
I just don't understand. I mean, listen, obviously there's some dysfunction going on in that organization. They fired coaches during the season. They had coaches taping each other. The only thing I blame Mark for is he got to do a better job of surrounding himself with people he can trust. You can't. My assistant coaches, they got to be with us. They can't be saying things behind our back why I got to fire them during the season. They can't be taping our conversations privately. That tells me that's the only thing I blame him for. I'm only gonna hire people I know got my back 100% because we're in the business to get hired to get fired. Every coach is gonna get fired. The one thing I always want to know if I'm gonna get fired, I want everybody with me to have my back.
And real quick before Charles Barkley continues, the sports world, which people don't really understand, but the sports world is a cutthroat business. Nobody's position on a football franchise besides the owner is safe. And sometimes the owner, like, look at the NBA. I mean, sometimes the owner's position isn't even safe. I mean, what's his name? Sterling. Damn it. The Clippers' old owner. I mean, he fucking said some shit that, honestly, I really didn't even give two shits about. I didn't consider it to be overtly racist or anything like that. I just thought that he was being honest in the most proper way he possibly could. In the most PC way he possibly could. And compared to some other people, I mean, honestly, I think he got shafted. I mean, there were people that did way more out in left field type shit than this guy did. And he lost his team. And he wound up giving it to Steve Ballmer. You know, but no, there's a cutthroat business, man. Nobody's position is safe. Nobody's position in this, in sports is safe. I mean, and it's a shame, man, because sports is an art form, man, and art is just, it's an imitation of life. This is why a lot of lessons in sports can be applied to life. Relationships, interpersonal relationships, professional relationships, bonds, trust, mistrust. And I mean, there's a lot of things in sports that can be used as life lessons. And this is what makes sports so captivating. And this is why people want to turn it into a goddamn reality show when it's not. Because reality TV isn't real. I'm not going to say real lives aren't affected, but to the degree in the sports world where real lives are affected, it's not the same. And this is why I don't like that whole notion that it's a reality TV show. It's not the same.
Clearly, some of those guys up top and some of those guys with him didn't have his back. And he has to take some responsibility for that. But I thought him getting fired was 100% not unfair.
And I'm going to say it again, then I'm going to end it here. In my opinion, and I'm not saying my opinion is fact, I'm not saying it's law, I'm just saying it's my opinion. My opinion, Mark Jackson was fired because if he was a success, in my opinion, he is a success. But if he was successful in finishing the job in Golden State and finally winning an NBA championship after so many years, that would have been the turning point for black coaches in professional sports. I can't even really look at Mike Tomlin being as impactful as Mark Jackson would have, because the Steelers were just coming off of a championship year. The year after Mark, I believe they won a championship. They didn't, win the championship, obviously, the next year. And I believe it was another year after that. And that's when Bill Cowher stepped down. And then Mike Tomlin got the job. And he still had the residual, team that Bill Cowher had. I mean, he still had the leftovers. And there was still good enough pieces to win another title. And he was good enough to get them there again. He hasn't been good enough to get them back. So, Well, no, he did lose to the Cardinals in the Super Bowl, but since the Cardinals Super Bowl was still like 12 years ago, 10 years ago, he still wasn't good enough to get him there, but get him back there. But this Mark Jackson thing would have been so fucking huge, man, because you talk about a team that hasn't won a championship. Like fucking Charles Barkley said, man, they in 17 years they made the playoffs one time, and he was able to get them to back-to-back playoff appearances. And slowly but surely, every single year, he was able to improve their record. They won 51 games. They fired him, brought Steve Kerr in. I believe the very next year they beat Cleveland in the NBA Finals. And I don't know, man. It's just that's what I thought about. So I thought I'd share it. All right.